Good morning, everyone. For those here on the West Coast and to our friends and colleagues joining us from points west, and to everyone else to the east of us, good afternoon. I'm Steve Terasaki, President of the Buddhist Churches of America, and I'm so happy to be here to introduce and to moderate this year's National Council meetings, Town Hall. In years past, the Town Hall has been a forum that has offered BCA leadership an ability to listen to a broad spectrum of voices from those who attend the National Council meeting. As we moved into the virtual environment, the Bay District of the BCA, the host for this year's National Council meeting and the events surrounding it, have made the conscious decision to expand the audience, to allow the broader Sangha of the BCA and those beyond our BCA temple walls the ability to join us in sharing the Dharma. So we thank those from our other sister Kyodans, the Honpa Ganji Mission of Hawaii, and the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temples of Canada for joining us in today's Town Hall. Today we're excited to use the Town Hall as a way to share the thoughts of our Bishop, Reverend Marvin Harada, and Reverend John Turner, resident Kaikyoshi minister of the Orange County Buddhist Church. Bishop Harada will speak on the topic of practical Buddhism versus truth-level Buddhism. After Reverend John Turner from the Orange County Buddhist Church will then discuss the online Buddhist learning program, Everyday Buddhist. Reverend Turner will discuss the courses that feature the practical side of Buddhism and how it's being received by its students and subscribers. He will also share how it can lead to truth-level understanding of the teachings. So let me introduce today's keynote speakers. Reverend Harada became BCA bishop in 2020, right at the time of the COVID breakout, as the world faced a remarkable moment in its history. He stated, "May we face this challenging time together, and may it give us even greater resolve to dedicate ourselves to support our temples in the BCA, so that we can continue to share the Dharma in whatever medium or manner that we can." Prior to beginning his tenure as bishop, Reverend Harada served as a minister of the Orange County Buddhist Church for 33 years. Reverend Harada grew up on a family farm in Eastern Oregon where they raised onions, potatoes, sugar beets, corn, grain, and even cattle. And as a child, he attended the Idaho Oregon Temple in Ontario, Oregon. He wasn't a serious student of the Dharma until he went off to college at the University of Oregon, where one of his closest friends was a devout Christian who tried to convert him and always wanted to talk about religion. It made him realize that although Buddhism was his family's faith, it was not yet his own. It was only thereafter that he began to seek and study for himself, rediscovering the wonderful teachings he had learned but had never put into practice. Reverend Harada went on to study at the Institute of Buddhist Studies before continuing his education in Japan at Chuo Gakuin Seminary and Ryukoku University, where he received his MA in Shin Buddhist Studies. Reverend Harada's focus has always been on growing our BCA Sanghas and introducing Shin Buddhism to those who have yet to encounter it. One of his current initiatives is to combine Buddhism and mental health, including recovery programs. The world is very much in need of what we have to share as Buddhists. And here's some fun facts about Reverend Harada. His favorite virtue, he says, is humility, and his chief characteristic is a sense of humor. One of his worst jobs he's ever had is weeding onions on the family farm in Eastern Oregon, but it helped build character and a work ethic. What's his favorite dinner? Oden, and if you haven't yet had Reverend Harada's Oden, you're missing something. And his biggest guilty pleasure is going to Las Vegas. Reverend John Turner is the current resident minister of Orange County Buddhist Church. He and his family began attending OCBC in 1999, and only 2 years later did he sign up to join the Minister's Assistance Program. Reverend Turner received his MA in Buddhist Studies from the Institute of Buddhist Studies and Tokudo ordination in 2010, followed by the Kyoshi certification in 2012. In 2017, Reverend Turner retired from his 35-year career in computer programming and became a fully ordained Kaikyoshi master at OCBC. He described his experience, quote, "When I started, I studied and practiced Buddhism diligently. I also stepped in every pothole, making every mistake one can make in understanding Buddhism. But I think this helped me become a better teacher." He's currently the lead minister on everydaybuddhist.org, which shares authentic and contemporary Buddhist teachings and practices for everyday life. He was a math major at UCLA and a computer programmer, and completely changed his in the midlife to discover Buddhism. His free time he spent doing yoga with his wife Linda and enjoying their children, grandchildren, and dogs. So now let's join Reverend Harada in his talk on practical Buddhism.
I'm on notes. Thank you very much, Steve. And good morning or good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for joining us today and yesterday as well. You know, growing up on the farm in Eastern Oregon, I was glad when I was old enough to be able to drive the tractor. Then I didn't have to work weeding the onions by hand. So it's my pleasure to discuss with all of you today practical Buddhism, something I feel quite strongly about. So first, I'd like to discuss the two levels of Buddhism, the practical level and what I call the truth level. So all of our great Buddhist masters and teachers, they're expressing Buddhism at the truth level, the very profound truth level. But the average person is more interested in Buddhism at a practical level. We ask questions like, will Buddhism help me to live a happier life? Will it help me to ease my stress or anxiety? Will it help me to live a more meaningful life? We might even ask, will it help to lower my blood pressure? Or will it help me to be more successful in business? Or will it give me good karma? So there can be a big gap between the truth level in Buddhism and those who are on the practical level. Let's say as a minister, we give a sermon and we're trying to talk about Buddhism from a truth level here, but people are listening with an interest in the practical level. So there's this huge disconnect. Ministers get frustrated. How come people aren't understanding my sermons? But the members are thinking, how come Sensei is so intellectual and how come he can't bring it down to our level? See? So there's this big gap. But some contemporary Buddhist teachers, I feel, are addressing that gap. Books by the Dalai Lama, Dan Harris, and Thich Nhat Hanh are wonderful examples. This is Dalai Lama's book, The Art of Happiness. Just the title alone, The Art of Happiness. He writes, I believe that the very purpose of our life is to seek happiness. That is clear, whether one believes in religion or whether one believes in this religion or that religion. We're all seeking something better in life. So I think the very motion of our life is towards happiness. 2 million copies of the Dalai Lama's book were sold. I don't think I've sold more than 1,000 copies of my book. 2 million copies. Just think of how many people that's reached. From The Art of Happiness, one interesting thing about greed is that although the underlying motive is to seek satisfaction, the irony is that even after obtaining the object of your desire, you're still not satisfied. The true antidote of greed is contentment. If you have a strong sense of contentment, it doesn't matter whether you obtain the object or not. Either way, you're still content. And we talk about this as gratitude in Shin Buddhism. So this is another contemporary author that I think is addressing the practical level of Buddhism. This book was a New York Times bestseller, 10% Happier by Dan Harris. You might recognize him. He was a co-anchor of Nightline and also on Good Morning America. So 10% Happier by Dan Harris. On the front page of his book, he writes, How I Tamed the Voice in My Head, Reduced Stress Without Losing My Edge, and Found Self-Help That Actually Works, a true story. So what happened was Dan Harris had a panic attack on the air as he's doing one of his broadcasts. He suddenly couldn't read the script. He had a panic attack. And he realized that the drugs that he'd been doing, his excessive drinking, his work pressure was causing, really great stress in his life. What can I do about it? He had to find something to help his stress. So he tried meditation. And it was really hard at first, but he got more into it. Then he went to meditation retreats, and he saw that it really helped ease his stress and anxiety. But this then led him to Buddhism. He wanted to know, what's the philosophy? What are the teachings that meditation is based on? He was led to seek a deeper truth level rather than just the practical level of meditation. So obviously some will stop at the practical level, but many will seek further to find the truth level of what they are experiencing in meditation or in mindfulness, which is so popular in our culture today. The Vietnamese Buddhist master, Thich Nhat Hanh, prolific writer, he's written so many books. Just the titles of his books alone show us how he is addressing the practical level. No Mud, No Lotus, the art of transforming suffering. Everyone suffers. We all want to know how to transform suffering. Anger, wisdom for cooling the flames. Everyone gets mad. Everyone has anger. How to deal with it. I used this book, Anger, for many discussions when I was a minister at Orange County. One time, one of our members came up to me and said, Reverend, it made me so mad. My wife gave me this book on anger and said, Here, you need to read it. He was half serious and half funny. How to Love, Mindfulness Essentials, Being Peace, Fear. Everyone has fears. Thich Nhat Hanh writes, How to Deal with Our Fear. Silence, the Power of Quiet in a World Full of Noise. Living Buddha, Living Christ. Isn't that title catching? Especially for someone who comes from the Judeo-Christian tradition. And No Death, No Fear, Comforting Wisdom for Life. I often use this passage from Thich Nhat Hanh's No Death, No Fear about when he lost his mother. I've often read it on Mother's Day service. The day my mother died, I wrote in my journal, a serious misfortune in my life has arrived. I suffered for more than 1 year after the passing away of my mother. But one night in the highlands of Vietnam, I was sleeping in the hut in my hermitage. I dreamed of my mother. I saw myself sitting with her, and we were having a wonderful talk. She looked young and beautiful, her hair flowing down. It was so pleasant to sit there and talk to her as if she had never died. When I woke up, it was about 2 in the morning, and I felt very strongly that I had never lost my mother. The impression that my mother was still with me was very clear. I understood then that the idea of having lost my mother was just an idea. It was obvious in that moment that my mother is always alive in me. I opened the door and went outside. The entire hillside was bathed in moonlight. It was a hill covered with tea plants, and my hut was set behind the temple halfway up. Walking slowly in the moonlight through the rows of tea plants, I noticed my mother was still with me. She was the moonlight caressing me as she had done so often, very tender, very sweet, wonderful. Each time my feet touched the earth, I knew my mother was there with me. I knew this body was not mine alone, but a living continuation of my mother and my father and my grandparents and great-grandparents, of all my ancestors. These feet that I saw as my feet were actually our feet. Together, my mother and I were living footprints in the damp soil. So beautiful passage, and Thich Nhat Hanh's book all read so beautifully. So to me, Shin Buddhism or Jodo Shinshu, we're a little behind in presenting the practical level of Shin Buddhism. And there is a practical level of Shin Buddhism. But first, we have to address what Shin Buddhism will not get you. So Shin Buddhism or the Nembutsu will not get you this. A big win in Las Vegas. Okay. If it worked, I would be up there every weekend in Las Vegas. So it's not going to get you a jackpot by saying Namo Amida Butsu. But although Shin Buddhism will not get you $1 million, it can help you to feel like $1 million. We had a wonderful devout member, Berta Hamada. I once posed the question to her in a study class. I knew what she was going to say, but I asked her, Berta, if you had your choice between $1 million or Namo Amida Butsu, what would you choose? $1 million but no Nembutsu, or Nembutsu but no $1 million? She says, oh, Sensei, that's easy. I would choose Namo Amida Butsu. See, if I ask myself that question, I have to at least pause for a second. Oh, $1 million. Just think what I could do with $1 million. But someone like Berta Hamada, no question. She chooses the Nembutsu. Buddhism won't cure your cancer, but it can give you the spiritual strength to face, even embrace your cancer. So having a positive attitude and facing illness, that's a big part of whether one is actually healed or not, I think. But it's not going to necessarily cure your cancer if I recite Nembutsu 1,000 times or something like that. So that is where the practical level of Buddhism and the truth level of Buddhism begins to merge, begins to connect. So let me go now into the truth level of Buddhism. I like to share a wonderful member from OCBC who passed away a few years ago. She was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, but her family shared with me that after her diagnosis, her demeanor never changed. Never changed. I mean, that's terrible news to receive. You have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now you got to go through chemotherapy and all of that. But her demeanor never changed. She maintained this positive attitude, grateful for her life, even though it was, tragically cut short. Ayako Suzuki was the wife of a Jodo Shinshu minister who died of cancer. And this book, Gan Kokuchi no Ato de, after the diagnosis of cancer, is a book of poems. I've translated a few of her poems. This is one of her poems. If one awakens to death, one feels much stronger about life. Exact opposites melt into one, and there is an incomprehensible peacefulness. Another poem. Now, as I sit here talking and laughing with my husband and children, I realize that we have done so for maybe thousands of times. But when I reflect that there might not be tomorrow, I feel like embracing them all. See, when we think we always have tomorrow, we don't think anything about having dinner with our family. But someone who is faced with cancer, maybe there's no tomorrow. So this dinner with one's family is so precious. Another of her poems, I will become Namo Amida Butsu for my children. I will become Namo Amida Butsu for my friends and temple members. When you think of me, please say Namo Amida Butsu, and I will call the Nembutsu in return. So I think this is a beautiful expression. So she's saying, when I die, I will become Namu Amida Butsu. She doesn't say, when I die, I will go to the Pure Land. She says, I will become Namu Amida Butsu. And that truth that she has received, encountered in her life, that truth is here now, and it will remain with her family. See? So when you think of me, please say Namu Amida Butsu, and I will call the Nembutsu in return. Beautiful poem. I'd like to share another person who came to encounter the truth level of the Nembutsu, Scott Morris. Scott was not raised a Buddhist, but his wife was a Buddhist, and their family, started attending OCBC some years ago. And Scott was diagnosed with ALS in the early stages. So ALS is very sad because there's no cure for ALS. If you get cancer, there's some hope for a cure, surgery, radiation, chemotherapy. But if you get ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, the best you can hope for is a slow developing ALS. Some people live 10, maybe even 20 years with ALS. Others, maybe they only live a couple of years. And it's an illness that starts from your feet and it works its way up your body. Scott's first symptoms were he kept stumbling. He thought, gee, how come I'm such a klutz? But it's because the sensation in his feet was being affected. So he was tripping. So then it works its way up your body, then you can't walk. Then pretty soon you cannot use your hands. Then pretty soon you cannot talk. And then it takes your life when you can no longer breathe. So it gradually works up your body. So around that time, we had created a Living Through Illness support group, and Scott attended regularly. And on one session, he was quite sad, and he was saying, gee, I'm going to be missing out on so many things in life. Probably won't be around for my son's high school graduation. I'll never be able to walk my daughter down the aisle on her wedding day. And I thought, what can I say to Scott to help him at this time? So I encouraged him to maybe write letters to his children that he wants them to read at those milestones in their lives. Since he was still able to write and type, compose a letter for your son that you want him to read the day of his high school graduation. You can leave the letters with your wife, and at those milestones, she can share them, with your children. Well, the next month at this support group, Scott said, "Oh, I wrote something." And I thought that he had written one of these letters to his children. But instead he said, "Oh, I wrote a poem." And this was Scott's poem. I have ALS, and I am grateful. I am grateful to retire early, to be with my family. I am grateful I have family and friends that are so supportive and hopeful. I am grateful I can still walk and get around. When that is gone, I am grateful I can still use my hands to feed myself. When that is gone, I am grateful I can still breathe and laugh and feel. When that is gone, I am grateful I had a wonderful life. And when that is gone, Namu Amida Butsu. See, I put this poem right up there with any of the Myo Koning's poems. So profound. So Scott came to encounter the Nimbutsu not just as a word, but as a profound truth. He encountered it at the truth level. That's why, even when his physical life is gone, what's still there is the truth of Namu Amida Butsu. So initially, we might be interested in Buddhism at the practical level, but if we continue on the path, we will encounter it at the truth level. Shinran Shonin, in the Tanisho, there's a passage that expresses this truth level in Shinran Shonin's understanding of the Nembutsu. It goes like this: but with a foolish being, full of blind passions, in this fleeting world, this burning house, all matters without exception are empty and false, totally without truth and sincerity. The Nembutsu alone is true and real. So when Shinran Shonin says this fleeting world, this burning house, this is a metaphor from the Lotus Sutra, and in which the Buddha is trying to say we're like someone who's in a burning house. We don't realize the house is burning. We have to quickly come to receive the Dharma. So this burning house is our world of samsara, our secular world, that is brief, fleeting, and false in comparison to the world of truth. So these are very challenging words from Shinran Shonin. He is saying everything in our life, our work, our assets, our relationships, everything is false in comparison to the truth of the Nembutsu. The Nembutsu alone is true and real. That's what Shinran Shonin is trying to say. So this passage from Shinran Shonin, this was a favorite of my teacher at Dukoku University, Shigaragi Sensei. He would often quote this passage and talk about it in his lectures and Dharma talks. So Sensei taught that we have to select and choose truth over secular things that are false and fleeting. We have to select and discard the false and select and choose the true. And it doesn't mean that we leave our spouses, our homes, our jobs. Of course, we have to have a home and a job, but it means we have to know that secular things in life are false in comparison to the truth of the Nembutsu. And to meet with truth means to meet with what is false in life. In Japanese, they say, uso ni ao. I'm going to skip over a couple. I'm going to skip over to Saichi in Miyokoni and his poems that express this truth level. I, bound for death, and now made into the immortal Namu Amida Butsu. Kind of like Ayako Suzuki's poems, where she says, I will become Namu Amida Butsu. Death has been snatched away from me, and in its place, Namu Amida Butsu. My joy is that while in this world of Shaba, the world of samsara, I have been given the Pure Land, Namu Amida Butsu. This Shaba turned into the Pure Land, and myself changing, Namu Amida Butsu. So, Saichi is someone who also encountered the Nembutsu at this truth level. So, returning to our initial discussion on the practical level versus the truth level, I think the challenge for future propagation efforts is how to bring out this practical side of Shin Buddhism, but without it becoming light Buddhism, like light beer. See, we don't want it to be just surface. We don't want it to be oversimplified. Shin Buddhism, Jodo Shinshu, has this tremendous depth. We have to always have the truth level, but at the same time, we have to bring out the practical level of Shin Buddhism as well. So, practical level Shin Buddhism must always lead to truth level Shin Buddhism. And I've tried to tackle this issue by offering classes like Resolving Life's Problems through Buddhism. I talk about these 4 areas of life's problems: matter of life and death, relationships, work, self-esteem, and how Shin Buddhism helps us resolve those problems that we all face in life. And it's a 4-week class. But to me, if we cannot communicate this practical level of Shin Buddhism, how can we interest those who are seeking the Dharma and connect them and connect with them? Because they're obviously looking to Buddhism at this practical level. If not, they will pass us by and they'll go on to other Buddhist traditions that address this practical level better than we do. So that is our challenge as we strive to share our Shin Buddhist teachings with the world, to bring out the practical level of Shin Buddhism that leads to the truth level. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Steve, and we can now listen to Reverend Turner.
Thank you, Reverend Harada. It's always wonderful to hear you, to understand your interpretation of how practical Buddhism can really lead us into this understanding of the profound truth of Namo Amida Butsu. So with that, let's turn to Reverend John Turner, who will give us his understanding of how his work with the practical Buddhism program that he has can lead us to a deeper appreciation for how Buddhism can impact our lives. Reverend Turner.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. I also wanted to thank the Folic Foundation at OCBC. They're a major contributor or donor to the Everyday Buddhist program. And it's kind of funny, we've kind of been taught at our temples to be frugal, save money, be in the black. They actually pulled me aside once and said, we want this money to be spent. We don't want you to save it, and we want you to propagate. And so this is their wish for our tradition. And what I wanted to share with you today is the lessons we've learned from everydaybuddhist.org, developing an online platform, hopefully for all the temples within the BCA. It has no OCBC branding on it. It's meant to be a Shin Buddhist learning platform. And as Steve mentioned, I became a full-time minister on September 1st, 2017. And on that day, when I first came in, Reverend Harada said, I'd really like to have a bigger online presence with our Buddhist education program. It's all in person. I'd really like to see it on the internet. And so we went live about 2 or 3 weeks later on Friday, September 22nd, 2017. And my motto has always been, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And the reason why we have these two animals here is there is a personality test you can take at work. There's 4 animals that you could be. One of them is a shark, and nobody gets along with the shark. I can't remember what the 4th animal was, but I realized that Reverend Harada is a dolphin. He is a visionary. He sees what could be. I'm a beaver. I like to get things done, and I like to implement. So the beaver and the dolphin really work well together. We need a visionary that kind of orients our implementation, but then we need people that actually can create and conquer and complete milestones along that journey. And whether we actually make the vision as stated in 2017, it's not so important because we go up a learning curve and we augment our vision as we learn and grow. So we weren't trying to hit a home run. We were just trying to get in the game. And one of the things we did that was very helpful was a SWOT, where we analyzed our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you have to be honest. Every temple has to kind of look at themselves and see where the value lies. There's an innate, inherent value in each temple, but it's different from temple to temple. So for us, our strengths, we believed, was an authentic Buddhist tradition that goes all the way back to Japan and the historical Buddha. We also had 20 years of teaching experience in person through our Buddhist Education Center. Our weakness, we didn't have a full-time staff and we didn't have enough volunteers. Opportunities, an online audience, and a way to practice Buddhism every day of your life. but the threats were big. One threat is celebrity Buddhism. I call it People Magazine Buddhism. And the second one is tricycle, very academic, lots of famous speakers. We don't have that. And it kind of goes against our grain. Our ministers tend to be humble. We don't self-promote. I'm not going to become a guru to sell online material. So this is what Reverend Harada was talking about. We have to be authentic to our own tradition. We also got a lot of feedback from our students, which I found very surprising. And during Reverend Harada's talk, I'm beginning to think that a formal education program is more practical than an informal, experiential education program. It seems more truth-oriented. So these results surprised us a lot. People wanted shorter lectures. They wanted blogs and live events. They wanted subtitles. And this was interesting. They wanted the videos to also be able to be consumed as an audio file, so they can listen to it while they're walking their dog and they're doing dishes. Some people never watch the video. They just listen to it on the go. They liked quizzes because it helped them reinforce their learning. They loved to comment and get feedback. And they also liked the bibliographies, to be able to purchase the source material from which the lectures came from. And then this surprised me. They did not like a formal education setting at all. They didn't want half-an-hour lectures. It's too long for everyday people. They didn't want a certificate saying they passed a course. They didn't want lecture order enforced. They wanted to take any course, any lecture, in any order. They wanted freedom. They didn't want the quizzes to be graded. And we were doing drip content, which means a lecture comes out like every week or every other day, and this stops people from binging. I had somebody say, when I'm off on Thanksgiving, I want to binge. I'm going to watch every video I can watch for 4 days straight. And they also didn't really want a formal curriculum. So we were very surprised to hear this. They weren't looking for a formal education program. They wanted experiences. They wanted contact with other people. They wanted a community. They wanted to be part of a path. So I'm not going to go over every one of these boxes, but the two of them I'd like to go over. I once was watching YouTube with a Tibetan nun, and she said something about Buddhism, and then she said, this is just general Buddhism. And I thought, no, that's Tibetan Buddhism. And then she said something else and said, this is Tibetan Buddhism. And I thought, no, that's general Buddhism. And then I realized that every sect or school of Buddhism sees the tradition through their own lens. So in our school, we don't make a distinction between general Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu. We explain general Buddhism through the eyes of our tradition without any apologies. And so we don't have this abrupt break between general and Jodo Shinshu. Jodo Shinshu is general Buddhism for us. And so that was a big change for us. So we're drawing out the essence of our tradition, even in the Hanamatsuri story, even under the Bodhi tree. And we make no apologies. And so we're teaching our tradition from the get-go. These were some more input we got. Having comments. Also, when people join our school, they're able to fill out a Google form. And a lot of what we realized is people weren't really looking for a formal school of classes and curriculum. We also decided that we're not a Sangha. We don't commit or compete with the temples. We're trying to provide a community. And so we want to augment or complement the Sanghas that are within our BCA temples. They also wanted more live content. A lot of our students, they don't live near a temple. They live in Oklahoma, or they live in Thailand, or they live in Spain. And so we've really been pushed into having more live content. We also wanted to be non-sectarian. We live in a Protestant country. There's lots of sectarianism, and most new people to Buddhism don't really want to hear us squabbling with Zen, or it's not appealing. From a pragmatic point of view, that kind of messaging isn't attractive. The other thing we also are hoping, and I can see this starting to happen, is we were hoping that Everyday Buddhist would dovetail into the Jodo Shinshu correspondence course, which might dovetail into the Institute of Buddhist Studies. So it kind of offers us this broad pathway in our tradition. And then the other thing we try to do, and this is a saying by Ricky Schlesinger, one of the people that's on our Everyday Buddhist subcommittee. He said, you got to make sure that you're fishing where the fish are. So one thing that's really important that we need to do is really try to listen to our audience. And it's difficult because we're getting multiple signals at the same time. So when we look at our comments, it seemed confusing, but we kind of had to pull apart people that already have some Buddhist background and some experience in the BCA and people that are totally new. And once you separate those two signals, it becomes much more coherent. So as I mentioned, authentic, not sectarian. What do you do on Mondays, not Sundays? We wanted to be pluralistic and embracing rather than single. We focus on the how a lot more than the what. We want to be affirmative in our Pure Land Buddhist path and not defensive. We don't make apologies. We're proud of it. It's authentic Buddhist practice from a lay-oriented context. Again, we focus more on practice and process and growth than we do on text. We want to be a community. And people are looking for an experience. They're not looking for a degree. Those are the people that are coming to us. And I know that a lot of people in the BCA cringe when they hear the word brand, but it identifies who you are. It makes it clear what your identity is, what you stand for. So our brand is we want to be authentic yet contemporary. And there is a great tension here. We don't want to pander, right? I don't want to be a comedian, but I want to be available. I want people to feel connected to it. I want them to feel welcome. So we're constantly, this is kind of the rubric we use. We're constantly debating, are we leaning too contemporary? If we lose our authenticity, we lose everything. So we really try to balance this when we offer content. Our vision is to provide a path to true happiness, and the mission is to share contemporary Shin Buddhist teachings and practices for everyday life. And on this first line are the members of our steering committee, Reverend Ellen Crane, Lila Grant, Ricky Schlesinger, Greg Goodman, and Andy Dean. And then what we've also done to survive is we've hired 4 contractors, 4 consultants. We have a 1099 relationship with them because the cadence and the content production, it just can't be done by volunteers. There's a very tight timeline. Things have to be done on a given day at a certain time, and it's difficult to ask that of volunteers. And so Paul Goodman does all of our videography. He's a professional movie maker. You've probably seen some of his films. Kenna Uesugi, graphics designer. Andy Dean is our head of social media, and Lori Goodman is our webmaster. So what is that? 9 people. 9 people are working on this to make it alive and always putting up new content. This is another thing we learned. We were having people buy courses, individual courses. Maybe they were $20, maybe they were $25. We would offer some for free, but we found out that when they're free, everybody signs up, but they're not motivated to consume the content. And free kind of devalues your content. So we charge, but we were constantly promoting individual courses, and it was exhausting. And we found from our audience that they really weren't looking for individual courses, they were looking for a path. So we came up with a subscription model. You join and you get access to all of our content, and it's delivered in the style of a pathway rather than buying an individual course. And I often say that we are the Spotify of Buddhism. And so this is the model we use at everydaybuddhist.org. The other thing we did is this idea of separating these different signals. We were getting feedback from these 3 different groups, and they all have different buttons and different sensitivities. So when we began, most of our new students were BCA members. Then we began to branch out into the BCA curious, and now we're reaching out to the general public. We are doing a online and print campaign, advertising campaign in Lion's Roar. And it's been really successful. When the ads go out, like maybe the second Tuesday of the month, my phone just blows up with everybody subscribing. And I keep track of who subscribes. I look up their IP address and I know where they live. And a lot are around BCA temples, but a lot are in North Carolina, or like I said, Wyoming, out in the middle of the Great Lakes somewhere. And they tend to be really grateful for having access to this content. But the sad thing is they get very melancholy that they're not near a temple. And this is the push for community and live events. So I'd like to begin to show you, we kind of have a funnel. We first have people go to everydaybuddhist.org, and then we move them to the courses platform. So I wanted to share this with you. Everyday Buddhist is our initial homepage for new visitors. And this is the advertisement that we did online in Lion's Roar. Everyday Buddhist, find meaning and fulfillment in your everyday life. We offer a 36 course pathway broken up into origins, understanding, and living. The main teachers are myself, Reverend Dr. Mutsumi Wondra, and Reverend Ellen Crane. And we do offer a free course. So, my son says you have to let them wet their beak. So we let them have a free course. And we are starting to get conversions this way, where they take the free course and then they subscribe. And you could subscribe either monthly or save money and subscribe per year. So here is the free course. Try our first course free. Start your personal path today. Enroll in our free course to get a sample of an Everyday Buddhist subscription has to offer you. And I wanted to tell you how this pathway kind of evolved. The first go round, we offered the 4 treasures, right? Most Buddhist schools only offer 3 treasures, but we offer 4. So we would teach classes round robin. We would teach a course on Buddha, then a course on Dharma, then a course on Sangha, and then a course on practice. And then we come back around again. This seemed like a good idea. It never caught on. It was very confusing. It didn't work. So we reinvented ourselves, and we decided to focus on the traditional way that Buddhism is presented to new people in the West. They usually start with it as a religion, and then a philosophy, and then, as Reverend Harada said, as a way of life. But I didn't want to use those words. So we have 12 courses in the origins category, kind of the origins of our tradition, 12 more courses in understanding. And rather than using the word practice, we use the word living. I think maybe D.T. Suzuki began to use that. And then, as I mentioned, for those who would like to consume the course lectures on the go as a podcast, everything is also posted as one giant audio file for each course. So when we move to the courses, I would like to give you a little sampling of some of that. This is what the course looks like. This is an origins course about deep listening, an essential skill in our tradition. There are 5 lectures. And then This is the one of the lectures, number 5, listening intimately. It's somewhere around 20 minutes. And then down below, we offer additional augmented content, PDFs, YouTube videos. This person gave a wonderful talk on the power of listening. It's a TED Talk. And so we pull in a lot of contemporary media, everyday content to kind of reinforce what we're saying, because it can also be found within our culture. And then for YouTube feeds or Reels, we chop up our lectures and Andy Dean puts them out on social media. And so here's a short one from a origins course on becoming Buddha. We'll discuss this in this course, the Buddha's life, from the beginning of his birth to his death at 80. We'll also talk about how we interpret his life. We don't usually take it as a historical narrative or as literal truth. We look at it as a metaphor and what the meaning is and what we can gain from that story. So that's me teaching an origins course. This is Reverend Wanderer teaching an understanding course. Life of Shinran, Nembutsu persecution was the course. And I wanted to show this to you too, to reach out. All of our videos are subtitled for the hard of hearing, and they're also subtitled not only in English, but also in Spanish and Japanese. And so to make it more accessible we have students in Japan, and we also have students in Mexico. And then this is a course that Reverend Ellen Crane did, at-home practice, how to create a sacred space within your own home, how to have your own personal obutsudan.
I am Reverend Ellen Hamada Crane, and happy to be here with you to tell you about what at-home practice can be. It basically is bringing your Buddhist practice to your living space on a daily basis. It will be creating an environment for practice and having an attitude of engagement and finding a place of serenity and peace for you in your own home.
So I wanted to share with you, besides just courses, we have something called the guest speaker series. And that's when we have people like Bishop Reverend Harada or Chen Xing Han come and speak for about 30 minutes. And these have been very popular. We get all kinds of different speakers. It gives me a lot more freedom to invite people outside our tradition. So this is a very open forum of new ideas. And then we also have live events on Zoom where, for example, March 14th, I'm doing one on developing new habits through the Dharma on Zoom. And we've gone from maybe 10 people attending to over 40 recently through better publicity and advocacy on social media. And then I wanted to show you this feedback that's quite interesting from our Google form when people first subscribe. How did you first become aware of Everyday Buddhist? I found this interesting. About 40% of the people found us on the internet through social media. About 30% found us through their current Buddhist temple, which is wonderful. They also, 20% found us through the BCA, Buddhist Churches of America, on the website. A friend told me about you is really tiny. And then a lot were none of the above. So, people are coming to us from a lot of different funnels, a lot of different avenues. And then some of the feedback, reaching people from the outside and inside. One person found us from the OCBC website. Somebody heard me speak at a Hawaii seminar in 2023. A lot of people through Lion's Roar from the Vista Buddhist Temple website. This person's from the Phoenix area, and I'm not sure they even know that we have a temple in Arizona yet. This person is from Wakayama, Japan. This person just signed up and they live in Mexico. This person's from Oklahoma. We get a lot of people around the Seattle temple. And this person, I guess, I visited at OCBC and gave him a brochure. So, this is how we're slowly attracting people. I wanted to just let you know some of our current, what do they call them, key indicators. We have 21 students logged in or created accounts. We have 280 subscribers to the Buddhist Course Pathway. We have over 2,100 comments that I answer personally, or Reverend Crane or Reverend Wondra. We answer like within an hour or two when people reach out to us. And then this is a map, a location map that Jim Scott did for us. You can see the distribution through the United States and Hawaii. And then this is the picture of the international students that we have. There's some in Japan. You could see there's fairly a lot in England because we have temples and contact with England. There's some in Spain. There's one, I don't know if that's Saudi Arabia or Jordan or Yemen, but we have a student there as well. And so, we're really trying to reach out and, attract. So we're slowly growing. We've never gone viral, but Reverend Dr. Ken Tanaka told me to not worry about it because the only way to go viral is to be really provocative and say something super controversial. And that's the only way to go viral. So he said, you don't want to go viral. So we're just slowly growing, slowly increasing our numbers and propagating the Jodo Shinshu teachings to people in their own home. And then I'd also like to share this with you. We also have something called the Temple Affiliate Program. What this does is it creates a partnership between Everyday Buddhist and the BCA Temple. And what we do is we give the temple a link, a proprietary link into our website. And any student that clicks on that link from your website and subscribes, 10% of all revenue will go back to the temple. It also gives your temple a bigger footprint. It makes you look maybe larger than you are. When guests come, they always seem to want more. They're busy. Millennials are cobbling together 40 hours a week. They work crazy hours. Almost every time I tell them about our in-person events, they can't make it. And so being able to hand them this online way to learn more and be part of our tradition is very well received. And so we have about 12 different temples now that are part of this affiliate program. And we're also working on an experimental program right now with Longmont and Hawaii of using our content in their adult discussion, using this as their content for adult discussion within their temples. And so far we have 12 temples. There's Las Vegas is kind of on deck. There's other temples that are there. Maybe Fresno is coming. But right now we have 12 different temples. As I mentioned, there's no OCBC branding anywhere in everydaybuddhist.org by design so that it could be used by any temple. It does create the glue. We found that our visitors seem to be coming back more when they can go away and kind of digest this content and get a sense of who we are. We offer the temples a sign-up form that they can fill out online, and we'll contact them. We also provide a media kit, images and buttons and that type of thing to actually put up on your website. And we can track this. I can see the revenue flowing to the other temples. And so, we're trying to provide this as a way of, and it doesn't compete with an in-person Buddhist education program. We have a Buddhist education program that's in person, but this allows us to reach out to people online. And the other thing I've told Reverend Harada, people my age, we tend to focus on websites. My daughter is 30. She doesn't go to websites. They don't use websites. They use Facebook, Instagram. And so we're really leaning into social media. The websites are kind of static. It's a funnel, but the way we attract people is posting content to those social media platforms daily. And this is what Andy Dean does for us. And it's brought in a lot of new students as well. So this is Everyday Buddhist. What we do now is we have free weekly blogs, and we alternate months between a guest speaker series and a live event. And Reverend Dr. Ken Tanaka is on deck. We have lots of really well-known Nagapriya, one of my favorite authors, is coming. We just recorded Hiroki Noda, a medical doctor at our temple, explaining how Buddhism informs his medical practice. Didi Just is going to do one on Buddhism and addiction. And I think Bob Matsueda he's agreed, is going to do one on Buddhism and yoga. And so between the 36 course pathway, blogs, live events, and guest speaker series, we have a real broad array of content for varying types of students. And it's been a joy to work on. I've learned a lot about Buddhism from the questions they ask and the feedback we receive. So I really wanted to thank you. And a lot of these students, they seem to be wanting true Buddhism. They want authenticity. They want experience. They want to know how it feels. And it's not life or death, but I can tell they're struggling. Right now, our climate is very hostile, and they're looking for a safe place to belong and join and be part of. And I think if we could do that for people, that's the beginning of true Buddhism. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Turner. A wonderful program for introducing, or at least bringing people along that journey that we find ourselves in. There's a question that came through on the live stream chat, and it's one question I think that this whole program really is targeted for. So in the Everyday Buddhist program, how do you connect to those who are not connected to a BCA temple or do not live near a temple of the BCA? And how do you find that information that is so out there now on a variety of platforms?
Yeah, so what we do for people that aren't connected with us, like I said, is we really lean into social media. Andy Dean is excellent. She posts every day on Facebook and Instagram. She puts up these reels. She advertises the live event that's coming up a month in advance. This is this idea of cadence. We start promoting a month in advance to get people to come. And so we also have contact us on our websites where people can reach out to us through email. We try to be really available, and really when people reach out, we respond immediately. And so this Lion's Roar, it's a little pricey, but it's really, really opened up us to the greater Buddhist community at large, I think.
Wonderful. There's a question on the technical aspects of your platform, and there's a question: do you have any plans to create a Google Play app for Everyday Buddhists?
I don't know what that is, so I will find out. But yeah, we have a lot of things in the works. One thing we'd like to do is do something like Discord or Mighty Networks. We've been looking a lot at creating a community, a message board with threads. That's something we've been looking into. Sometimes we get ahead of ourselves because we just don't have the bandwidth. But yeah, we're constantly looking forward and trying to figure out where this is all heading and how people want to consume this content.
Yeah, there seems to be an interest in having it be available on your mobile phone, right? So
yeah, well, the good news is that Everyday Buddhist, I didn't mention this. We have an app on the iPhone, and so it's really nice. There's an app that you download and you can consume on your phone. The only problem is it's not on a Google phone or a Android. So our Android customers are really not happy. So it's hard. It's hard. We get
But
a lot
for,
of input, and we're trying to, this is what we meet every week, our community. Reverend Harada couldn't believe it. We meet every week and we have an agenda and we go over these issues. It's a lot of management.
yes, I can understand. So if you do have an iPhone, what you're saying is that you go to Apple Play and you can find the app. It's just called Everyday Buddhist. Is that
No, I didn't want to mention this today, but the company we use to host our school is called Teachable. And it's a little, we wished you would never see Teachable and I'd never have to mention their name, but you go on to the Apple Store and you download the Teachable app for free, and then you log in to Everyday Buddhist.
okay? All right. So it's a two-step process,
Yeah, yeah.
but it is available mobile on your mobile device, so that assuming it's within the Apple.
So, like at our meeting, we would discuss, should we write our own app? Should we hire somebody to write an Android app and an iPhone app? Should we do that? And we could, but it takes a long time and it's expensive. So we're constantly making trade-offs and talking about priorities.
A great challenge for somebody who may be in the gallery here to
Yeah,
step forward and provide those kinds of technical expertise to help
yes,
generate these kinds of apps, right?
yep.
Um, I have a question for you about some of your live events, and so those are all live streamed. Is that what I'm hearing? And how do you create interactivity with those in those live events?
Well, what we usually do is we give the speaker a lot of freedom. These are like TED Talks. They're not courses. They're not lectures. They kind of set the agenda. They pick the topic. It's kind of free form. They talk for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then we open it up, much like this, like this kind of format. We open it up to questions. And, Reverend Crane, I think it was December or January, she did a live event on building a sacred space at home. And everybody wanted to know, like, oh, where did you get that bell? And what Buddha should I have on the altar? And what kind of incense do you burn in your tradition? And so there was a lot of dialogue and communication back and forth. And that's something that I've said people are really hungry for.
So Terry Omori from the Vista Buddhist Temple says, Reverend Turner and team, thank you for offering Everyday Buddhist. It's been a wonderful Buddhist education program. And then another member, or Mohan Kanango from the Buddhist Church of Oakland says, +1 for auto recording. I was walking my dog as I listened to this. Big smiles. So we are reaching a new audience with the Everyday Buddhist program, and I think that's so much part of understanding how the Dharma how we can use social media now and the virtual environment to go beyond our brick and mortar temples, right? So.
And our hope is that people will join us, and then they'll look at all of our temple affiliates, and we'll funnel new students into temples as well. We've gotten some new members at OCBC in this way.
Yeah, it's a great lead in, and so much of what we've heard too is in many of our temples and churches who live stream their services. It's a great way for those people who find it very scary to walk into a temple.
Yes.
Just right off the street, and it gives them some understanding of what happens in our services in a way that allows them to feel more comfortable and secure when they do walk through our doors. So, yes. Reverend Marvin, in your talk about this path and the understanding of practical Buddhism and achieving this profound understanding of the truth of Namo Amida Butsu, how do you see this kind of journey happening for just the everyday person who's caught up in the rigmarole of life and all the things that we all get involved with? What happens to allow us to find this profound truth?
Well, I think people have to understand that it's a lifelong process and that uh, they should be patient. Sometimes people kind of want immediate results uh, from listening, but we have to kind of build up a foundation of the teachings in our life, and so that means listening, coming to service, listening to Dharma talks, or maybe taking a class or reading books, talking about it with fellow Sangha members, and then that all kind of builds over time, and then we begin to see it in our everyday life, or we might have a life experience that all of a sudden brings it to the forefront for us as well. Sometimes it's quite a dramatic kind of experience, and sometimes it's just sort of a gradual sort of building process. I really like the example that Dr. Haneda uses that in Shin Buddhism, it's like smoked salmon. So the salmon doesn't try to become smoked salmon. It is put into a smoker, and over time, it's transformed into smoked salmon. And if we just go and listen and learn, you know, the we're transformed into a person of the Nembutsu by the Sangha, like smoked salmon.
What a great analogy. I love that idea. I want to be smoked salmon. um, um, my folks behind the scenes, um, are there any other questions or comments that you're seeing? Okay, thank you, Bradley Menda from the Bay District Host Committee. So no questions. So at this point, what I'd like to do is just thank Reverend Harada and Reverend Turner for a great sharing of the Dharma this morning, this afternoon. It's really been wonderful to both understand how Shin Buddhism, our Jodo Shinshu tradition, really is one in which it starts by just understanding, but it's a journey, and we're all on this journey of awakening, right? And the programs that through programs like Everyday Buddhist really help to take people along that path. So thank you so much for offering your Dharma talk this morning to this broad sangha. And I see many temples are streaming this live to their sangha. So it's wonderful to see that. So with that, I want to thank all of you for joining us this morning with this unique version of Town Hall. And I want to take an opportunity to really thank the Bay District Technical Committee, well, the leadership for a Bay District that is putting all the things in place to allow us to reach all of you in this virtual environment. So with that, Sensei, do you want to lead us in closing Gassho?
Sure. Chairman Gasho, Naman Navuts, Naman Navuts, Naman Navuts, Naman Navuts, Naman Navuts, Naman Navuts.
Among us. Thank you again, and for all of you watching from around the country, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.